This is the story of the boy who never spoke. He lived with his mother in a small town in India. Their house was modest, but cozy. The walls were adorned with faded photographs and mementos of a life well lived. The father's absence was a constant shadow, a silent presence felt in the hushed tones and averted gazes. The boy and his mother had a ritual. Every Saturday they would visit the tailor, getting fabric for Abaji's kameez. It was a tradition that provided a sense of normalcy and continuity in their lives. The tailor's shop was a hub of activity with bolts of colorful material stacked high in the rhythmic clatter of the sewing machine, providing a soothing background noise. But today, the tailor's shop was closed. This caused the mother confusion and a deep sadness that threatened to engulf her. She tried to make the best of the situation, focusing on her embroidery, finding solace in the repetitive motions. But her thoughts kept drifting to the empty space beside her, the space where her husband should have been. She missed his quiet strength, his unwavering support, the way he knew how to fix everything. She missed his stories about his childhood and the dreams they shared for their son's future. The tailor's absence echoed in the silence of the house. After a while, she decided to take a walk. As she stepped out into the sunshine, she felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. The familiar streets seemed to mock her with their indifference. The laughter of children playing in the park sounded like a distant, forgotten language. She walked past the bakery, the smell of fresh bread, a painful reminder of the simple joys that seemed so out of reach now. She stopped by the river, hoping to find some solace in its tranquil beauty. But even here, the absence of her husband loomed large. They had shared many moments by the river, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple, sharing their hopes and dreams for their son's future. The river was a witness to their love story, a silent confidant to their joys and sorrows. Now it was a place of solitude and grief. As the sun began its slow descent, she turned back. The thought of facing the empty house, the silence that screamed his absence, filled her with dread. The absence of her husband wasn't just a void in their home, it was a chasm in her soul. With each passing day it grew deeper, threatening to consume her whole. She longed for him to come through the door, his face etched with the familiar lines of a life well lived, his eyes twinkling with warmth and affection. She wanted to hear his voice, to feel the strength of his embrace, to be enveloped in the comforting silence that had become their shared language. She missed the way he listened without interrupting, the way he understood without words, the way he loved without reservation. In the tapestry of their lives, he was the golden thread that held it all together. His absence had left a gaping hole, a wound that refused to heal. She carried on, driven by the memory of the man she loved and the hope of a brighter tomorrow for their son. Back in the room, the boy sat quietly, observing the world around him. The absence of his father was a constant presence in his life, a shadow that followed him everywhere. From the hushed tones of the adults to the curious glances, he felt the weight of their sympathy, their pity. He saw the tears his mother hid, the forced smiles, the brave facade she put up. He saw the loneliness in her eyes, the longing for a past that couldn't be reclaimed. He found comfort in the routine of their lives, the familiar sights and sounds, the rituals that marked the passage of time. The tailor's shop with its comforting clutter became their sanctuary. Here he could escape into the world of colors and textures, where the rhythmic hum of the sewing machine drowned out the echoes of his father's absence. The tailor, a portly man with twinkling eyes, became a surrogate father figure, his gruff exterior hiding a heart of gold. The boy learned the art of tailoring, not because he wanted to, but because he needed to understand the silences, the unspoken words, the gestures that spoke volumes. The tailor taught him the patience to wait, the skill to observe, the importance of listening. He taught him that sometimes a stitch in time could mend not just clothes, but hearts. The tailor's shop became a microcosm of life, a place where the boy learned the most valuable lessons about love, loss, and resilience. It was here he began to understand the depth of his mother's sacrifice, the quiet strength she possessed, the love that bound them together. In the evenings, when the shop was closed, they would walk home together. Two solitary figures against the backdrop of a setting sun. The boy would hold his mother's hand, seeking solace in her touch.
Ow.
Feeling the tremors that ran through her arm, betraying her fragile composure. He knew she was scared, not of the darkness, but of the demons that lurked within it. He knew she was afraid of losing him, too. At home, the boy retreated into his room, finding refuge in books. He devoured stories, losing himself in worlds where the impossible was possible, where good triumphed over evil, where love conquered all. He read about heroes who faced their fears, about villains who learned compassion, about journeys that transformed lives. He read about resilience, about hope, about the triumph of the human spirit. As the night deepened, the city slumbered, wrapped in the soft blanket of darkness. The moon cast long, eerie shadows, and the wind whispered tales of its own. But inside the house, a different kind of darkness prevailed, a darkness born of fear, loneliness, and despair. The silence was deafening, broken only by the ticking clock on the wall. Each tick echoed the passage of time. Each talk reverberated the emptiness in their lives. In the quiet of the night, the boy would hear his mother's prayers, her voice soft yet fervent, reaching out to the heavens above. Her prayers were a lifeline, anchoring her to faith, offering her strength to face another day. The boy prayed, too, not for himself but for her, that she might find peace, that her worries might ease, that a smile might grace her lips once more. As the years passed, the boy grew, yet he remained tethered to his roots, to the memories of his father, to the love of his mother, to the lessons learned in the quiet corners of the tailor's shop, carried their stories within him, a testament to the enduring power of love and resilience. He eventually found his purpose in life, becoming a storyteller, weaving tales that touched hearts and echoed the silences of a nation. His stories became a bridge, connecting people, cultures, and generations. Through his words, he gave voice to the voiceless, healing the broken and reminding them of the beauty that still existed in the world. And so the story of the boy who never spoke became a tale whispered around campfires, a legend carried on the wind, a beacon of hope in times of darkness. For in the tapestry of life, it is often the quietest voices that resonate the loudest and the deepest scars that leave the most beautiful marks. It started the same way. The light through the curtain was soft, not golden, not gray, just soft. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. The fan was on. Its sound was steady. There was no clicking, just the low, dull movement of air. I didn't sit up right away. I stayed in bed for a while, maybe 10 minutes, maybe more. Then I sat up slowly. My back didn't hurt. My arms felt normal. There was nothing new about the morning. Moved the window. Moved the curtain a few inches. The sky was slightly blue. The street was empty. A small leaf rolled across the road and stopped at a crack, then didn't move again. At 8:30, Amma called me for breakfast. The same voice as always. Flat. Without energy. I said nothing. But I went to the table anyway. There was a small piece of paratha and cold tea. I chewed slowly. The paratha was dry. The tea had too much sugar. I finished both, Amma asked. Or kuch chahi? Shook my head. She nodded. Abba wasn't there. Back in the room, I sat down again in my chair. I didn't open the notebook. I didn't even look at it. I stared out the window. At 9:10, the red cycle boy passed. He had a new school bag today. It was black with green zippers. He didn't ride faster. He didn't ride slower. He just passed by, same as always. He didn't look up. His face looked tired. Maybe not. Hey, it always looked like that. At 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Amma opened the door. I didn't get up. I just sat in my room, quietly listening. A familiar voice spoke. Assalamu alaikum. And it was my cousin Shahid. I hadn't seen him in over 2 months, Amma said, Ender. Ah, he said, Thori Durke Laya Hun. I didn't move. They walked into the lounge. I could hear chairs shifting. Then Amma called me. Saeed, Shahid Ayahai. Milo. I stood up slowly. I didn't rush. When I entered the room, Shahid smiled a little. I nodded. He said Kayahal Hai. I said Theek. He nodded. Main be Theekun. Then silence. Amma went to make tea. Shahid looked around the room. Coffee din hoge, he said. I said nothing. He asked Abakai's Hain. I said Chup Hain Ziada. said Han Sunatha, Thoda Anka, Tabiat Kamzur, Chal Raha Hai. Then more silence. Now the clock ticked. The fan turned. He looked at his phone once, and kept it in his pocket. Amma came back with tea. She placed it down. The cups clinked slightly. We drank. No one said much. Shahid looked at the wall. Paint Purani Ho, Gaylagdi Hai. Amma said Han Socha, Hai Karwange. I didn't speak. Wate lift me. Parna Likna, Chal Raha. I said Nahi. He nodded. The conversation ended there. After a while, he stood up. Chalta Hoon. Amma said, Kana Takalo. He said, Nah, Jaldi Main Hoon. I walked him to the gate. Said, Fear Milt Hain. I said, Theek. He walked away. His shoes made light sounds on the pavement. I went back to my room, sat down. The chair was still warm. The window was still open. The leaf was still at the crack in the street. I picked up the notebook. Opened to the last page. It was still blank. I didn't write anything. Lunch was simple. Roti and bindi. Amma didn't say much. I didn't either. The fan turned. Light moved slowly across the floor at 3 o'clock. A crow landed on the balcony railing. Cawed once, then flew away. I didn't react. What? The neighbor's window opened. Someone looked out, then closed it again. I watched the curtain move, then stop. The red cycle boy returned around 5 p.m. Same face, same movement. He didn't notice me. Dinner was at 7:30. Plain rice, no salt. I didn't say anything. Amma seemed tired. After dinner, I sat near the fan again. The bulb flickered once, then became steady. At 8:50, I lay on the bed. I thought about Shahid's visit. There wasn't much to think about. He came, he sat, he left, and the room stayed the same. The day ended. Like all the others, it began like every other day. Sun hid behind the curtains, making the room dark, but not black. I woke up and sat on the bed. The first thing I noticed was my back. It didn't hurt. I checked my legs too. They were both there, moving as they pleased. I got up and walked to the window. The sky was filled with tiny dots. Stars, that's what they're called. I don't remember the last time I saw them. Abba says the stars are far, far away. I wish I could touch them, maybe if I had wings. But I don't have wings. I don't have much of anything. I went downstairs. Amma was making tea. The kettle sang its song. The song of boiling water and escaping steam. I sat down. She brought me a cup. It was hot and sweet. I drank it quickly. Amma asked, Or Kukurai? I shook my head. She nodded. Abba wasn't there. Usually he is. He sits quietly, sipping his tea. Sometimes he reads the newspaper. Sometimes he looks at the stars. Today there was no one. At 9 o'clock I went to the window again. The sky was darker now. Most of the stars were hidden. The wind was different. It whispered through the leaves. It sounded like a lullaby. I liked it. I walked to the big tree in the park. Every afternoon I sit under this tree. I read my book. Sometimes the red cycle boy joins me. Today he wasn't there. I didn't mind. I opened my book. It was filled with adventures. There were dragons and wizards. There were magic lamps and genies. I read about a young boy who found a lamp. He rubbed it, and the genie appeared. The genie gave him 3 wishes. The boy wished for more wishes. That's the best trick, having wishes that never end. I closed my book. I thought about my wishes. What would I wish for? For Abba to be happy. For Amma to smile more. For the stars to come closer, so I could touch them. These weren't good wishes. These wishes wouldn't bring me anything. They wouldn't fill my hands with gold or my stomach with food. I wished for something else. I wished for wings. Wings to fly high above the clouds. Wings to reach the stars. The wind rustled the leaves. It sounded like a song. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I wasn't. The red cycle boy arrived. He had a new book today. It was bigger than his old one. It had no pictures. I didn't ask him any questions. He didn't say anything extra. We sat under the tree in silence. The wind kept singing. I thought about my wings. Maybe they were hiding inside my book. I opened it. There were words on the pages. Words that looked like secret codes. I read them slowly. They told a story of bravery and hope, of a boy who fought bad wizards with good magic. With each word, I felt my wings growing stronger. Soon they would be real. Soon I would fly. At 4:30, the boy stood up. "Thank you," he said. I nodded. He walked away. I watched him go. He disappeared around the corner. I closed my book. The words danced before my eyes. I couldn't see the pages anymore. It was getting dark. Soon the stars would return. I wanted to fly to them. I wanted to touch their light. I walked home slowly. The road was empty. The houses looked quiet. The stars twinkled above me. I reached my gate. The lock was old and rusty. I turned the key. It made a funny sound. Then the door opened. Inside, the room was dark. The fan was off. I heard a soft voice. "Where were you?" I was getting worried. It was Amma. She was sitting in her chair. She looked tired. "I was in the park, Amma." "For how long?" "I don't know. A long time." I walked to the window. The stars were bright now. They filled the sky. I wanted to reach them. I wanted to hold their light. Amma stood up. "Come, I'll make you some tea." I nodded. I followed her into the kitchen. Together we made tea. The water boiled. The kettle sang. I poured the hot water into a cup. It smelled sweet. I added some sugar. Then I took a sip. It tasted like honey. The stars twinkled outside. Amma smiled a little. Abba wasn't there. Maybe he was watching the stars from somewhere far away. I finished my tea. I felt warm inside. I wanted to share the feeling. So I turned to Amma and said, "Amma, do you believe in wishes?" She looked at me. Her eyes were soft. "What do you mean? Like if you wish really hard, can your wishes come true?" She was silent for a moment. "Sometimes they do, Saeed. Sometimes they do." Okay, so this is a scene from a movie. And a very important thing to note here is that it's set in a dystopian future. You can tell this from the setting, the costume, the whole vibe. So we've got this woman, and she's being chased by some bad people. She runs into an alley and then keeps running until she finds this door, which is like her only way out. She reaches for it, touches it, turns the knob, walks in, and immediately collapses. When she does this, we hear this noise. So yeah, it's clear what's happening. She has died. But there is one tiny detail that makes the scene even better. Look again. So yeah, there's the doorknob. Notice how her hand isn't touching it. She doesn't hold it. She just turns it. Now, think about how long that chase must have been, how tired she was, how scared she was. And now imagine that in the last moments of her life, when she finally thought she was safe, she dies. Again, look at that doorknob. Such a small thing, but it adds so much to the scene. Hello, and welcome to this channel. This is a story that tries to do the opposite of what we just saw. Here a man is watching his day pass by. Nothing happens to him. No threat enters his life. No one chases him or hurts him. In fact, no one even comes into his house. He spends his day alone. Well, technically, he isn't completely alone. His mother is in the house, but he barely acknowledges her existence. I guess this is what they call codependency, but maybe it's just plain neglect. Either way, the son chooses to ignore his mother. Instead, he watches the world go by outside his window. So what does he see? For starters, some rain. And I want you to pay close attention to this rain. It's not a full-on shower. There are no strong winds, no loud claps of thunder, no bright flashes of lightning. This is a very specific kind of rain. It falls slowly, hesitantly, almost as if it doesn't want to fall. It feels like the clouds are making up their mind about the weather. First they threaten rain, then they withdraw. He sees the rain hesitate like that throughout the day. And yes, the rain does stop. After that, he sees a few people going about their business. There's a boy who walks past the neighbor's gate. There's a man cycling past. But these people aren't just objects in the background. They add little details to the story. Take the boy, for example. He's just walking normally, but then he slips. This tells us two things. One, the ground is wet. Two, the boy is okay. He doesn't even fall. He just slips and continues walking. Similarly, the man on the cycle. He's also just doing his thing, but there's no rider visible. It's just a blur under an umbrella. So we get a glimpse into the lives of these people. But our man, he doesn't become a part of any of it. Just observes the world go by. Eats his meals alone, but those meals themselves tell us something about his life. In the morning, he has dry bread and an overboiled egg. The egg has a small crack in it. And if you're wondering why, well, just look at the previous scene. These kinds of things happen when you don't care about your surroundings. When you're too busy looking at your phone or something else, you're bound to miss small things like a broken egg. Later, he also drinks tea. The tea is weaker than usual. It is more water, less taste. But he drinks it all anyway. This might seem like a very small thing, but it tells us a lot about him. Think about it. If you make tea for someone, you put sugar, maybe even milk, because you want to make it taste good. But in this case, the narrator's tea tastes worse. But he doesn't complain. He just drinks it. Why? Because he doesn't expect anything better. He's gotten used to tasteless tea. I know this might sound sad, but think about how much worse it could have been. Instead of drinking tea, he could have been thirsty and drinking water. Or instead of eating eggs and bread, he could have been hungry and eating nothing. And as night falls, he sits by his window and sees the world turn dark. There's a street light, but it's flickering. This might seem like a very insignificant observation, but think about how it could have been worse. Instead of a flickering street light, he could have seen nothing. Imagine sitting in total darkness for hours. Or instead of seeing the light flicker, he could have heard it. Imagine listening to a buzzing electric pole for hours. Now, you might be wondering why I'm paying attention to all these small details. Well, think about it. If the story was normal, if the protagonist had a decent life, we wouldn't need these details. We would know everything we needed to know just from the basic plot. But this isn't a normal story, so we need these small details to fill in the gaps. We need them to understand what kind of a life the protagonist lives. For example, at one point he looks at his shoes. His shoes, by the way, are by the wall. They aren't even by the door. He doesn't even wear them today, but he looks at them anyway. I want you to pay close attention to this detail. The left one still looked crooked. So here's what we gather from this. Our man goes out regularly. He's been out recently, and he hasn't fixed his shoe yet. On one hand, you could say he's lazy, but on the other, you could also say he doesn't care. What's the point of fixing a shoe if you're just going to break it again? And this brings us to an important idea in writing. Our characters' actions might seem pointless at times, but to the reader, every action means something. Every action tells them something about the character, about their personality, about their life, about their world. And this is especially true for stories like this. When nothing much happens, your readers depend on these small details to piece together the story. In fact, the entire story revolves around these details. The protagonist has a radio playing in the other room. It's cheerful. It's lively. It doesn't match the house, but he doesn't go near it. He chooses to stay in his room. Again, you could call him lazy, but there's another way to look at it. Maybe he's detached. Maybe he doesn't care about the outside world. Maybe he prefers it that way. As far as his mother goes, well, she's in the other room. She eats separately. She listens to the radio. She doesn't interact with her own son. Now, most people might call this dysfunctional, but remember, we don't know much about the situation. Maybe she's sick. Maybe she's not. Maybe she's tired. Maybe she's not. Maybe she wants to spend the last years of her life peacefully. Who knows? All we know is what we see. All we know are the small details. For example, the protagonist says that the streetlight is flickering, but there's another way to look at it. Maybe it isn't flickering. Maybe the protagonist thinks it's flickering. Maybe he's just looking for things to dwell on. So let's step back and look at the bigger picture. What exactly is happening in this story? Well, quite simply, nothing. Our man is just passing time. He's watching the world go by. He's letting life happen to him. Trust me, this is a skill most of us will never learn. We're constantly trying to fix things. We're constantly trying to change things. We're constantly trying to grab at new opportunities. But sometimes it helps to detach yourself from all of that. Sometimes it helps to just sit back and watch. Sometimes it helps to just be. And that's where this story ends. Our man just lets the day end. He watches the world around him, takes in all the small details. He lets the day fade away. Now, if you liked this story, you should definitely check out this playlist. These are some of our best stories. They'll keep you thinking long after you finish listening. I'll leave the link below. Also, if you're enjoying our content, please subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us grow. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. Well, how do you explain something like this? It's just one of those days where you can't figure out if you having fun or not. You don't know what's happening. You're living it, but you're not sure about it. It could have been a dream. In fact, I think it was a dream. Let me tell you about it. I didn't know what time it was when I woke up. The light behind the curtain looked faint, not golden, it's not blue, just dull. I opened my eyes slowly and didn't move for several minutes. I wasn't tired. I just didn't feel like moving. The fan was already on. Its sound felt like it was part of the room, like furniture. I turned on my side. Nothing on that side had changed. Then I sat up. The bedsheet had a wrinkle near my foot. I pressed it flat, then stood up. I went to the window. The curtain had a slight fold in it from yesterday. I didn't fix it. I moved it just enough to look outside. Same street, same gate, same cracked pavement, same ball under the rickshaw. Still there, still nothing. At 8:35, Amma called from the kitchen. Nash DeCarlo. I didn't answer. But I walked to the table anyway. There was bread, slightly burnt, and tea that looked too thin. She said, "Dude, kom tha." I nodded. I chewed slowly. The toast scratched the roof of my mouth. Didn't say anything. After eating, I washed my hands and sat back in my room. At 9:20, the phone rang. The old landline on the table in the corridor? It rang once, then stopped. Not twice, not 3 times. Just once. Amma came out of the kitchen. Phone, Bahatha. I said, Han, surf ektafa. She stood near it for a few seconds.
Yes.
Then went back in. It didn't ring again. I sat down on the floor, not the chair today. My back rested against the bed. The fan's wind didn't reach me here. I looked at the notebook. I didn't touch it. The ball outside moved a little. Maybe because of the wind. Or maybe it didn't move at all. At 10:45, a man on a motorcycle passed slowly. His bike made a dry rattling sound. He didn't wear a helmet. He didn't look left or right. He vanished around the corner. I leaned my head against the wall. There was a mark above me. Maybe from an old nail. Maybe not. Lunch was dal and roti. The dal had no taste. I added salt. It didn't help. Amma asked, "Thick high?" I nodded. Thick high. We didn't speak after that. Back in the room, I finally sat on the chair. I stared out the window again. The sky was gray, but not cloudy. Just ... without color. At 2 o'clock, the postman came. I heard his bicycle's bell. He stopped next door, handed something, then moved on. Nothing for us. At 3:15, someone knocked on the neighbor's gate. A child opened it. They closed it again. That was all. A cat slept on the corner wall in the sun. It didn't move for a long time. At 4 o'clock, I stood up and stretched. My arm cracked softly. The sound surprised me. Only sound in a while. At 5:10, the red cycle boy came. He wasn't riding. He was walking with the cycle beside him. His hair looked wet, oily. He looked at the ground the entire time. The cycle's chain was loose. He turned the corner and disappeared. Dinner was sabzi and dry chapati. Amma made acker too. I didn't eat it. She didn't ask why. Abba wasn't home. I didn't ask where he was. After dinner, I washed my hands in the sink. The water was cold. The soap was slippery and almost finished. At 8:30, I opened the notebook. I wrote, "Greater than phone rang once," and didn't ring again. That was all. I closed it. At 9 o'clock, I lay on the bed. The curtain was still half open. The fan was still turning. The phone stayed quiet. Nothing followed the ring. And the day disappeared like it was never there. If only it was a dream. If only everything could be a dream. If only we could live in dreams, maybe we wouldn't have to face some things. You know what I mean? It's like life itself is a big, confusing puzzle, and we're all trying to fit these random pieces together. You wake up in the morning, try to make sense of the world. You wonder what will happen if you step outside, what kind of faces you'll see, what kind of stories the day has in store. You plan your steps carefully, try not to miss a beat. But sometimes life plays a trick on you. It gives you a day like this one, a day without a story, a day without meaning. You wake up, look around, and suddenly you realize you don't know what to do with yourself. You're stuck in this strange place, unable to move forward or backward. And the worst part is you're not even scared. It's not like you're facing something terrifying or dangerous. You're just lost in this endless loop of nothingness. It feels like you're floating in a dark, silent sea, surrounded by shadows and uncertainty. And you keep searching for a lighthouse, a guiding star to pull you out of this darkness. But nothing helps. The sun sets and rises, but it doesn't bring any clarity. The clock ticks, but it doesn't offer any answers. You're trapped in this endless cycle of time, waiting for something to happen, waiting for something to change. But nothing does. The day drags on, and you keep wondering if it will ever end. And when you finally come to your senses, you look around and realize you're still there. You're still stuck in the same place, surrounded by the same walls, in the same room. And the world outside keeps spinning, but you're frozen in time. You don't know how to react. You don't know what to do. The scariest part is you don't know if you want to break free. Because sometimes being lost in this nothingness is better than facing the pain, the fear, and the chaos of the real world. It's like you found a safe haven in this madness, a place where you can hide from the storms of life. And you don't want to leave. You're afraid of what awaits you on the other side. So you stay there, trapped in this endless loop, hoping that someday things will change. But deep down, you know they never will. In the end, you're left with nothing but questions. Questions that have no answers, hopes that have no meaning, and dreams that have no future. You're just a puppet dancing to the tune of fate, caught in this endless game of hide and seek with reality. You're alone in this world, struggling to find your way, struggling to find your voice, struggling to find your place. You're just a speck of dust in this vast universe, trying to make sense of it all, trying to find your purpose, trying to find your truth. But sometimes the truth is you're not meant to find it. Sometimes the purpose is to keep searching. And sometimes the journey is all that matters. That's it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss out on our latest videos. And if you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button. See you next time. And that was the whole day. Light gone, noise gone, purpose gone. But time moved anyway, slowly, without power, without reason, until it was tomorrow. Thank you for listening. This is the host. I'm here to talk about this story. This is the first time I've ever read a short story on this platform. It's called And That Was the Whole Day by Samantha Schweblin, who's an Argentine writer. She has also written a novel called Kentuckus. Have you read any of her works? Please let me know in the comments below. Let's get into the story now. Let's talk about some of the things that stood out to me. First, this is a story that uses silence and stillness as a major element. Now think about how difficult it is to write a short story about silence, because generally short stories are filled with action and dialogue, so it's a difficult tightrope to walk. This story does it beautifully. Look at the opening paragraph. Notice how many senses are absent in the opening paragraph. We see the narrator lying in bed, noticing that the ceiling looks darker than usual, that the room feels heavy, that the bedsheet presses on their skin, but there is no mention of any sound. The fan is silent. There's no distant radio, no sound of traffic or birds, no ticking clock. Even the silence of the room is highlighted multiple times in the story. For instance, when the narrator goes to the window, the story says that nothing stirred on the street. The plastic ball beneath the rickshaw had collected a lidless bottle cap beside it, which shows us the lack of movement and sound in the setting. Why do you think the author chose to set the story in such oppressive silence? What effect do you think this had on the characters and on you as the reader? Do you feel uneasy reading a story with so much silence and stillness? Let me know in the comments below. Another thing that struck me was the story's insistence on normalcy. This is a story about a power cut, and yet it's about everyday life.
Ow.
So when the electricity goes out, the family does not panic. They don't try to contact anybody or look for answers. Instead, they carry on with their lives as if this outage is normal. In fact, this is the only world they know. Here the story says, when I rinsed the plate, the tap sputtered. Water pressure was low too. Water cuts are rare in our cities. They usually make headlines. And that's why when we read this line, we feel the strangeness of the situation. But here, for these people, it's just another Tuesday. They are used to interruptions. So how do you think this affects their lives? How do you think it affects their minds? Let's talk a little bit about the characters. We meet Amma and Abba, the parents, and the narrator, presumably the son, because the story is told from a child's perspective. Even in the face of adversity, the parents remain hopeful and calm. Emma apologizes for the cold breakfast, but the narrator assures her that it's fine. Likewise, when Abba cannot read the newspaper in the dark, he just sighs and folds it. These are quiet acts of resistance, a refusal to be cowed by the situation. They simply adapt and make the best of what they have. In contrast, the narrator is moodier. They spend the day wondering what's going on outside. They notice small things: a fly stuck on the window, a bottle cap next to a toy, a candle leaning in the wind. They have a certain fascination with what the world looks like when the electricity is out. So how do you think the children in the neighborhood spent their time? Why do you think they did not play? Next, let's talk about the structure of the story. The story is set over the course of a single day, beginning with the morning and ending with the next day. Over the course of this day, the narrator keeps checking the time. They wake up at 7 a.m., breakfast is at 8, lunch at 12, dinner at 4. The story ends at 8:30, so the story moves from 1 hour to the next, detailing the silence and stillness of each moment. What effect does this have on the story? Do you think this emphasizes the length of the power cut? Does it emphasize the monotony of the day? And why do you think the story ends just as it's about to become night? I also want to discuss the title of the story, and that was The Whole Day. The story details the monotony of a day without electricity. And every hour is the same as the last. The sights and sounds are the same. Even the weather remains the same. So the title is a powerful summary of the story. In fact, the title makes us realize how strange the story really is. The events of the story are simple and ordinary, but the totality of these ordinary events becomes extraordinary. So that's why the title is so striking, and that was The Whole Day. That is a very strange statement, isn't it? Why do you think the story ended with that line? How does it make you feel? Now finally, the last thing I want to talk about is the atmosphere of the story. It's a story about hopelessness. There's no resolution. There's no answer to the outage. And this hopeless atmosphere is emphasized through the sensory details in the story. Look at the description of the food, for instance. Breakfast consists of a heel of yesterday's bread and water from the clay pot. Lunch is cold rice, cold dal. And dinner is just potatoes, salt. Why do you think the food is described in such a way? What effect does it have on the story? Also, look at the description of the surroundings. There is no greenery around. The only time we see a plant is when the narrator says, "A fly stuck on the window was a brown stain at the edge of a leaf, otherwise green. The streets are dirty. A bottle cap is stuck next to a toy. Leaves are stuck to each other. Even the sky refuses to release its grime. There is no blue sky, no white clouds, just a dirty sheet drawn across a weak bulb." So the atmosphere of the story is one of gloom. There's a sense of exhaustion that pervades the narrative. But there's something even deeper going on in the story, I believe. I think this is also a story about a deep spiritual crisis, about a feeling of helplessness in the face of the universe. Think about the questions the story makes us ponder. Why does this happen? What is the meaning of this ordeal? When will it end? Such questions force us to confront the randomness of existence, the apparent meaninglessness of events, and that's where the story's true power lies. It reminds us of our insignificance in the grand scheme of things, of how our lives can be turned upside down in an instant, of how we often don't have control over our circumstances. It's a profound meditation on life, one that forces us to examine the fragility of our existence. What did you think of the story? Let me know in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you for listening. I will see you next time.